Date: Standardized Human Time, October 1st, 2136. Our evacuation party was fortunate to skirt the orbital battle and depart the system with a fair distance between us and the Arxer. The Terran transport unloaded its critically wounded passengers at a Venlo border outpost, while the rest of the posse trekked on to Earth. I wasn't sure how the Predators planned to deal with the terrified aliens upon arrival. Marcel had been stabilized by onboard medics, and didn't want to send Nolia to a refugee site run by Predators without him. In fact, I got the feeling that he bore no intention of leaving her in a camp at all. Every Gojid on the vessel gawked at him yesterday, when he launched into a silly song about a twinkling star to put her to sleep. Marcel was the reason I resisted the temptation to disembark in the relative safety of a Venlo station. After every horror that befell him in space, I was uncertain if he'd ever return to the stars. Our separation could be permanent. The last thing I wanted was for our friendship to conclude with me showing fear and disgust toward his species. If someone told me when I signed up for the Humans First Contact program that I would willingly go to their home world, I would have keeled over laughing. But I felt guilty over how my instincts ran amok on the Gojid cradle, and how quick I was to fault the Predators for things they had no role in. Was my trust in humanity really that conditional? Were my prejudices still alive? The mere sight of Marcel in the doorway had me in shambles at our first meeting. Now, I don't think about it when he snarls or picks me up. I don't react to any human's eyes either, not even strangers or crowds. Maybe I've made more progress than I give myself credit for. All sorts of bizarre ideas waltz through my imagination when I try to envision Earth. I was the first Venlil to visit humanity's home. Not even the bravest scientists or diplomats would venture to the Blue Marble. It was a massive step, which might be a far cry from my preconceptions of society. Landing on Terran soil would place me at the whims of their government and expose me to the general populace. It would offer better insight into what the average Predator was like, but was that a positive? I was woefully unprepared for what I had seen, mixing in with the UN military units. As the spacecraft touched down, I tried to remind myself that it was too late to back out. This was not the time for second thoughts. My fright would only contribute to the other passengers' panic. Gojid refugees, line up single file and prepare to exit the ship. Anyone who fails to follow the directions of UN soldiers will be hit with a tranquilizer dart. For your own safety, a grating voice growled over the PA system. Volunteers are handing out blankets, water, and dried fruit. If you require medication or special accommodations, approach the nearest human in a white coat or Red Cross insignia. You are safe here. Please do not panic. I snorted. Easier said than done. The human statements didn't have the calming effect they desired. There wasn't a single refugee that didn't look petrified. One elderly Gojid collapsed with a thud, clutching her chest. The terror generated by this amount of Predators could certainly cause a heart attack. Terran medics gestured for everyone to move back, and hurried to cart the cardiac victim out. For the Gojids on board, it must appear they were being towed to a Predator's lair as cattle. Ferocious-looking soldiers with massive guns were corralling them into the open air. Who would believe a beast's claim that they would return anyone that wished to leave to a Gojid or Federation territory as soon as they arranged terms with their government? "Hi, Slanik," Tyler said hesitantly. The blonde human took a timid approach, as if worried about frightening me. As traumatic as his table manners were, the big guy's intentions were benevolent. He couldn't help that his taste buds evolved with such a vile proclivity. Like Marcel explained, it was biology that was beyond their control. I was aware that Predators consumed meat by definition, and that didn't negate everything I knew about their rich emotions. Humans weren't like the Arxer, hunting living creatures. They cultivated cell samples in a lab. What was so amoral about that, other than the fact that it was appallingly gross? It's on the same level as consuming fecal matter. Don't exactly want to share a table, or drink out of the same saucer. But it doesn't have to shape my entire opinion of him. Out of sight, out of mind. Thanks for saving my life, Tyler. Sorry for freaking out back there. I pinned my ears against my head and saw his eyes soften at my scared expression. It was a good idea on paper for me to help humanity communicate with civilians. But I had no idea what I was signing up for. It was sensory overload, all the death, predation, and aggression. It's cool. I forget how much you guys hate predators sometimes. I know, Marcel doesn't, but how could he? The flesh-eater muttered. Following Tyler's sharp gaze, my own eyes landed on the redhead. I couldn't help but notice the looks Marcel shot the Gojid adults throughout the ride. Clearly, his own species picked up on it too. This mission wasn't the thrilling revenge jaunt he dreamed of. My friend's right limb was stuffed in a sling, while his dominant arm held the spiky child. He was clutching Nulia to his chest, like he expected someone to take her away. His hazel eyes were glazed over as he watched the adult refugees stumble outside. A tear rolled down his cheek, which the young Gojid poked with a claw. "Don't cry," she whimpered. "Why are you sad?" The human pawed at his eyes. "I'm not. Just tired." The child tilted her head. "But you just slept for hours, Mazel." "Marcel," he enunciated, rolling the R sound with a reverberating growl. "You can say it, dear. Mawa, Sel." Nulia hooked her claws into the corners of his lips and tugged them upward. I gaped at her bravado, playing with a predator's eating orifice. There's the happy snarl. "Stay like that." Marcel flashed his teeth with genuine amusement. He glanced at me, noticing that Tyler and I were both watching with concern. The vegetarian struggled to his feet, limping toward us at the rear of the line. We shuffled to the exit as a pack, and my nerves surged through my veins. Warm sunlight struck my face as I took my first look at humanity's home. The refugee camp was based in a decommissioned airport, judging by its appearance. Various structures had been converted to lodging, and tents dotted the runways. Humans were passing out supplies in what I thought was a former hangar bay. Doctors checked on any Gojids showing signs of life-threatening distress. Camera crews were parked on the other side of a chain-link fence. A few predators shouted the word Venlil, trying to get my attention. For better or for worse, my image was as the first representative of my species here. I forced myself to straighten and offered the most human-like wave I could muster. UN guards manned the perimeter, allowing only cleared personnel through the gates either way. Alarm rocketed through my veins as I spotted a ferocious, four-legged predator alongside them. The brown and black beast made the humans look cute and cuddly. I was sure its serrated fangs could puncture their flesh like pudding, but the primates seemed oblivious. It sniffed the air with twitching nostrils and eyed the armed Terrans with hungry pupils. I knew they had forward-facing vision, but how could they be that blind to their surroundings? How could the dangerous beast have drawn that close to them unnoticed? My survival instincts leapt into overdrive. Run! Predator! Save yourselves! Run, quick! Wait, Marcel can't run. He's going to get picked off first. Him and Nulia are an easy target. The humans need to gun down the predator before it gets to us. I bolted back toward the transport, overcome with a blinding terror. Tyler raced after me, closing the distance with long strides. He scooped me up despite my shrill, incoherent protests, and walked back to Marcel and the child. "There's a lot of predators here, Slanik," Marcel sighed. "What, you've never seen a human before?" I thrashed in Tyler's grasp, trying to get him to put me down. My ability to formulate words other than predator or run was greatly diminished. A pitiful squeak escaped from my mouth, and I jabbed a claw at the monstrous quadruped. It was panting and slobbering over the human's boots. Were they the most clueless species in the galaxy? Nulia screeched as she spotted the beast, and understanding flashed in Marcel's eyes. He massaged the child's neck, seeing her spines pop up. Why didn't the human seem the least bit afraid? Why didn't he call to the guards to shoot the predator? That is called a dog, Marcel said slowly. We domesticated them thousands of years ago, which means we trained them to be friendly to humans. Tyler grinned. I have one at home. They helped us with hunting back in the old days, but now we keep them as companions, my human interjected. Dogs are loyal and obedient to us. They're not sapient, but we have a close bond. Those UN guys have the predator situation under control. I watched as a Terran soldier patted the dog on its head, and its tongue lolled out of its mouth. The human fished into his pocket, pulling out a cookie. He placed it into his hand, stretching his palm as flat as it could go, then offered it to the fanged predator. What was this madman doing? Trying to lose a limb? The beast sniffed at the offering, and wagged its tail. Disbelief filled my chest as it snapped up the morsel, seizing the food without nicking the man's hand. It barked at the Terrans, who were showering it with toddler-esque praise. Did that non-sapient predator understand their words? I can't believe even humans tried to befriend that thing. Conditioning dogs to be friendly to humans means they weren't always friendly, I mused. And Tyler keeps one in his residence, like that is normal. How can he sleep with it around? Tyler sensed that I calmed down enough, and placed me back on the ground. Was that how human hunting worked, co-opting other predators to do their dirty work? Marcel promised an answer once we were out of danger, but had yet to fulfill his vow. My outburst already drew a lot of unwanted attention though, so I decided not to say anything now. One human took brisk strides toward us, flanked by a group of soldiers. His thinning salt and pepper mane, and crisp coat with a UN pin, looked familiar. Dear stars, it was the Secretary General himself. I recognized him from our landing at the outpost. Was his entourage coming to arrest me for inciting panic? Slanik, isn't it? Welcome to Earth. Elias Meyer leaned in, so close that I could feel his breath inside my ear. The air movement tickled the sensitive hairs, and I resisted the urge to paw at it. Act natural and pose for the cameras for a moment. It'll be bad PR for everyone if they think you're afraid of us. The human official draped his arm across my neck, and I forced myself not to shy away. Why did the predators always have to grab for the vital areas? All he'd have to do would be to lock his elbow, to constrict my throat. I apologize for the canine presence. The Secretary General spoke the words in a booming tone, and I sensed that he was trying to tell the media that I hadn't freaked out from the humans. The dogs are necessary for security purposes. Security from what? I whispered. Meyer smiled, but did not answer. He slipped his arm from my shoulders, and gestured for us to follow him. I tailed behind the UN leader on shaky legs, terrified to traverse the checkpoint. Marcel and Tyler lurked at the rear, probably to seal off my escape route if I tried to run. The dog was tethered by a thin rope, on closer inspection, but it seemed to be pulling the humans more than anything. Those awful eyes were watching me, its yellowed fangs were the size of my ear. I couldn't stop hyperventilating. A predator like that could smell my fear, couldn't it? What could the Terrans do if it lunged at me? A tinted vehicle was waiting with a door ajar, and Meyer flicked a hand toward the car. I didn't need a second invitation to spring into the steel death trap. Marcel and Tyler squished in beside me, while the Secretary General found a seat opposite us. The Gojid child was inconsolable after the dog sighting, sobbing into my human's grimy uniform. Meyer raised his eyebrows. Where are your parents, kid? They must be worried sick about you. No, they're not. Nulia wailed. I called for my mommy and she never came back. She didn't care if Mosul or the bad monsters ate me. Marcel gave her head a gentle pat. Your mother made a mistake, darling, because she was really scared. She loved you very much. Tyler nodded. That's right. You're a good kid. Meyer's eyes lingered on Nulia for a moment. His thinly veiled displeasure suggested he'd prefer if Gojid children weren't roaming his planet. Evidently, he decided it wasn't good PR to force Marcel to leave her behind either. Anyhow, sorry about that mess, Slanek. I had no idea the Venmal were sending visitors, though don't misunderstand me. We're thrilled to have you here, the Secretary General said. I'll work out luxurious arrangements for all of you. If there's anything you want, just ask. I cuddled up to my human. Thank you, sir. Anything for our galactic neighbors. I'm pleased that you both returned alive, especially with how symbolic your connection has become here on Earth. Speaking of which, I have some positive news. Marcel leaned forward. Positive news? Sovlin has been arrested by UN forces. He's being held in a clandestine facility for alien POWs and is awaiting trial. My eyes widened, while my friend's gaze narrowed. How had the Terrans tracked down the sadistic Gojid? Regardless of their methodology, I was relieved the captain wouldn't get away with his wretched deeds. If the predators executed Sovlin, it would satisfy Marcel's wish for his death. The anger boiling inside him was taking its toll on his kind soul. Take me there, my human growled. I want to see him. Secretary General Meyer exhaled, shaking his head in the negative. That's not a good idea. So what? Pull some strings. I'm not going to do anything drastic, Marcel said. And why would I risk the political fallout if you did attack an alien prisoner in our custody? There is zero benefit to any party, and we aren't prepared to host visitors there regardless. You'll be able to see Sovlin in court. Come on. All I want is a short conversation, Meyer. The red-haired human's expression was pleading, and his eyes searched the UN leader's resolute face. I'll go along with whatever media strategy you want in return. You know I'm important to our propaganda efforts, at home and abroad. The UN leader stared out the window in thought. Was Marcel's claim that he was that vital to the Terran narrative accurate? The Secretary General crossed his arms with a resigned sigh, like he hated his next actions. A holopad found its way into his hands, and he began typing out a message. I'm sure I will regret this. I'll let you peek at his cell from outside. You can enter only if Sovlin wants to see you, Meyer rumbled. Understand? Marcel nodded. Yes. My ears pinned back against my head. Those predatory eyes brooded with such a deep hatred that it made me squirm. There was no telling whether the human could, or would restrain his aggression, once his tormentor was within grasping distance. Whatever happened, my primary hope was that this confrontation would bring him peace, at last. Date, Standardized Human Time, October 2, 2136. A harsh buzzing drifted into my ears, rousing me from unconsciousness. I stirred on the thin cot, and grunted at the mattress inflexibility. Terror flooded my mind as I realized where I was. Gravity this authentic could only mean I was on Earth. I had received a military greeting as soon as I neared the Sol system. When I informed them of my name and intent to surrender, the humans ordered me to power off my vessel's engines. A breaching ship jostled my shuttle and pumped a sleeping vapor through the ventilation shafts. The predators weren't taking any chances of trickery or resistance. The accommodations were reasonable, with every basic necessity available. By comparison, the Arxert kept their captives in squalor. A pen designed for 5 soldiers would be the size of my room's bed. The reptiles had no qualms about piling us on top of each other and degrading our dignity. Water and a fruit bowl were sitting on a small table. The drinking liquid wasn't the unsanitary sludge I'd expect from predators. My cell was caged by a barred door, but it was spacious enough to walk around. The barrier slid open as the buzzing noise finished, and shoe thuds echoed through the vicinity. I might never see a person that's not a predator again, I realized with a chill. That's very likely. A pudgy Terran male in layered garments entered, studying me with a calculating gaze. My spines felt like they were about to worm their way out of my back. Those eyes were revolting, an unyielding assertion of dominance. Was he dissecting me in his mind, or searching for my vulnerable areas? The predator tugged out a metal chair and beckoned me to the table with a finger. I steeled myself for the physical pain I knew was about to occur. Well, I slunk over to the opposing chair on shaking legs. Go on then. The crown of fading white hair signified his age, I presumed. He fished a stack of papers out of a briefcase and placed some glass adornment over his eyes. The beast looked like he engorged himself on flesh regularly. How else would he have fattened up like that? Words were insufficient to describe the numbing dread snowballing in the pit of my stomach. Figures that the humans waited until I woke up to start reciprocating the cruelty. I was on the other end of Marcel's plight, caged with a monster with no way out. Hi Sovlin. My name is Anton Kozlov, and I'm your legal counsel, the human said. I cleared my throat. Legal counsel? Yes. If you are unsatisfied with my services, we can find you another representative, he replied. I don't understand. Representative, represent me for what? You're going to be put on trial for crimes against humanity. Your case has been referred to the International Criminal Court by the UNSC. That's the United Nations Security Council. My ears could hardly process what they were hearing. Humanity had a proper court system that relied on evidentiary claims to establish guilt and stable institutions? It all sounded so tame and normal. And United Nations? Since when is the humans' government unified? Every source says they do nothing but war with each other. First off, such decorum is undeserved. There is no question that I did what I am accused of, I stuttered. Why would there even be a hearing? Anton's lips curved down. Everyone has the right to a trial. Presumed innocent until proven guilty. We are a civilized species, with laws and justice systems, you know. I wish you weren't. Savage retribution would at least alleviate my guilt over my own sadism. This calm professionalism was twisting the knife. The self-proclaimed lawyer had to know he was defending someone who would have killed his whole species in a heartbeat. If I stumbled across him in my domain, I would have tormented him without refrain. Anyhow, let's go over the charges and the facts of the matter. The ICC believes that your case has gravitas enough to fall under their jurisdiction. The predator passed a packet in front of me, which detailed my crimes in their angular script. While you tortured a single human, it was intended as an attack against our entire species. You're the first alien to face trial by Terran law, so I'd say that's important enough. Okay. You also bore the intent to genocide civilians, which granted, there is less direct evidence of. If you cannot understand these charges, let me know. We can try to translate them into your language, though I cannot vouch for the accuracy. I have a translator. I understand just fine. I lowered my head in shame, despising every word of sophistication he uttered. How do I confess? I am guilty. I don't wish to dispute the charges. I definitely don't want to see evidence of what I did to Marcel. I wish I could forget about that beast. Oh stars, what if he comes to watch the proceedings? You can plead guilty, but I think there is a solid defense in the making. Of course, the evidence against you is airtight. The human paused and tapped a finger to his temple. Maybe they tried to use their hands like we use tail signals. With your innate resentment of predators, I think there is substantial evidence to argue insanity. We can beseech the court for leniency on those grounds. What? That's not what I want. You're predators. You can think of a brutal and agonizing way for a man to die. I beg your pardon. I want my actions repaid. Request the worst imaginable sentence your government can give, please. Something torturous. Anton squinted at me. He poured a glass of water and pushed it toward me with a sigh. The primate must be mocking me by concocting such a defense. There was no psychological excuse for my untenable hatred. I failed at every opportunity to revert my course, and never used a scrap of logic. The last thing I wanted was for Terran judges to empathize with my perspective. The predators needed to prove themselves to be a little unhinged or vindictive. Maybe they could have some feelings, but they weren't just ordinary, docile people. Prisoners are not tortured on this planet, the human explained. It's explicitly forbidden by our laws. While you are in UN custody, your needs will be cared for. You will be imprisoned if convicted, likely for a period of 10 to 20 years. My eyes widened. That's it? That's it. Imprisoned where? Like where I am now? Yes. This facility was specifically set aside, in case we captured any Federation prisoners of war. Make an exception. What kind of predators are you? The lawyer eyed my flailing claws nervously. You need to calm down. I'll be back when you're ready to discuss your case. The predators had a much better grasp on their aggression than I thought. There wasn't a scratch on my physical form, nor had there been the deployment of intimidation tactics. Even screaming at Anton couldn't evoke the violent reaction I desired. If anything, my antagonization seemed to frighten the old man. If you're just going to dream up excuses, don't come back at all, I growled. I don't need legal counsel. The white-haired human collected his belongings, shaking his head in what I thought was frustration. That refined conversation wasn't at all on par with my expectations. They were supposed to enact all sorts of predatory compulsions on me, not confine me under humane conditions, to ponder what I had done. This is the worst outcome. They have every chance to return the favor, yet they choose to be better. Listen. If you want to plead guilty, that's your right. Anton paused at the door, as he was buzzed out by the guards. But let me test the waters first. See what sort of deal the UN are willing to offer. Why would they offer anything? You're still one of the Federation's most brilliant tacticians. That counts for something. Fine. I really don't care anymore. Excellent. Oh, and Sovlin. Oh shit, someone else here to see you. You may want to refuse him. Would Cap here dare to turn me away? A steaming voice hissed, so throaty that it sounded like a snarl. I have a right to face him. The lawyer hurried out, and a muscular silhouette appeared by the door frame in his place. The new predator was baring his teeth, with strained breathing that verged on panting. This must be the interrogator I was waiting for. I curled my claws for the humans to send him in, assuming they were monitoring the cell somehow. They must not have understood. Do you wish to speak to the visitor? A gruff voice crackled through a speaker. There is no established visiting area at the moment. We can arrange a separate meeting under more defined circumstances, if you wish. I blinked slowly. No need for pomp and circumstance. Send him in now. The bars creaked out of the way. The human stalked in, with a guard tailing behind. My visitor limped like he was wounded. One arm was placed in a sling, and a bandage was tied around his leg. His short hair bore an orange tinge, but it was no more than stubble on his scalp. The predator's face was beet red, marred by 3 long scars that carried a lighter shade. The pattern of those marks clicked with the nagging images in my head. I gasped in horror, and struggled to keep myself still. My eyes turned toward the floor, as Marcel shoved his crooked nose inches from my face. Every part of me wanted to hide under the bed. It would be much easier to pretend he wasn't here. At least I didn't kill him. His skeleton is much healthier, and he's lopped off what little hair humans have. Stars, he is hideous. Look at me, the Terran roared. I took a shaky breath, and gazed into his hazel eyes. The human's expression was contorted, with a coat of water swelling around his pupils. The depth of emotion, when I truly looked, was staggering, not the soulless abyss I saw them as before. It was a looking glass to his conflicted mind, which was beleaguered by resentment and recollection. Every time I close my eyes, I'm back there. I can't be touched on the neck, without thinking of your fucking collar. Marcel's raspy voice sounded choked, and I heard snot bubbling in his nose. He furiously wiped a tear away. I can't look in the mirror without seeing your fucking scars. I'm reminded of you by everything. My skin tingled from the feel of his warm breath on my snout. Guilt plagued me, twisting my insides into knots. How could the human return to his society and act civilized, after being treated like an animal? Wetness trickled down my own cheek, and my vision grew fuzzy. I could see truth in his words, that the anguish wreaked havoc on his mind daily. Maybe beating the shit out of me, or killing me, would give him some closure. I don't want to hurt you again. But when you start attacking me, I won't be in control anymore. I suggest you start with the claws, or tie up my paws, I croaked. The predator slammed a fist on the table, baring his teeth. All I want is to know why. What have I ever done to you? Why did you do it? Because when I look at you, I see the Arxer. I'm sorry. You're sorry? Fuck you, he spat. You're a piece of shit, you know. A lying sack of shit. How am I lying? Tell me the real reason. You said they took everything from you, when you were about to kill me. What did you mean? You don't care. I don't talk about that, ever. Don't you owe me that much? I drummed my claws on the chair. If Marcel could derive meaning from that wretched tale, it was something I had to rehash one more time. Sorrow filled my throat, just reminiscing about it. Arxer shuttles snuck past our defenses, and the reptilians went on the hunt. One of the first places they landed was my neighborhood. The Gojid Armada's efforts failed to stave them off, therefore, it was my fault that those monsters tormented my family. Unspeakable things were done to the only two people I loved. I spectated the whole event, from a holopad that was dropped on the floor in panic. The awful screams were something I tried, and failed, to blot out of my mind. The reason I led that famed charge against the Arxer fleet was the paralyzing grief I felt that day. It was meant as suicide, dying in a righteous blaze of glory. Instead, I was saddled with a heroic mantle, and consigned to live for nothing more than vengeance. They killed my family. While I was on a call to wish my daughter good night, happy. It's no excuse. Marcel stepped away at last, pacing by the door. I was surprised he didn't throw that back in my face, and try to reopen the wound. Even if humans could feel empathy, there was no reason to extend that to me. Slanik's words about how kind and gentle this predator was rang in my ears. The Venlil staked his life on that belief. This isn't someone who is cruel and sadistic. This is a good person who is dying on the inside because of you. Indeed. There's no excuse for what you did, the predator decided. But I saw what the Arxer do. I saw a lot of things I can't begin to describe. Saw how. It's not the same on television. I didn't get shot twice sitting on the couch, Sovlin. I deployed on your cradle, don't you call it? You don't even give your fucking homeworld a proper name. How is that any worse than naming your planet dirt? Well, fine, on your cradle. I saw Arxer soldiers munching on a Gojid's organs in the middle of a fucking battle. Them plucking people off the streets to God knows what fate, us racing to evacuate anyone. Cities wiped off the map, and explosions all around us. Marcel's voice quavered with horror, and his eyes stared blankly at the wall. There was a grim sincerity in his testimonial. It would be easy to interpret his anecdote as gloating, but he seemed saddened by the destruction of my homeworld. The humans hadn't wished such a senseless fate upon us. It was us who yearned for a genocide against their race. I chewed at my claws with despondency, mourning the infinite loss of the cradle. The question nagged at my mind, whether any humans partook in the flesh consumption, but I bit back that morbid curiosity. I should just let the predator continue uninterrupted. There were children crushed to death by their own parents, left broken in the streets, he recalled. A massacre as far as the eye can see. The stench of death, flies buzzing in the air, you all did that to yourselves. Humans would never do that to our kids. A predator speaking as though a stampede was a conscious choice, and claiming the moral high ground. This was all so bizarre. The notion of humans caring for their young, or having any kind of family unit was jarring. To think of them forming attachments felt alien to my brain. Somehow, you're the worst of it all, Sovlin. I will never escape what you did. I swallowed. So what do we do now? Are you going to kill me? Oh, I dreamed about killing you. Tearing you from limb to limb. Marcel pinched the bridge of his crooked nose. But that's not who I am. Not to Nulia, not to Slanik, and not to myself. You don't get to take that away from me. I don't understand. Take what away? The predator's lips curved up into a snarl, revealing his pointed canines. How I treat a monster, it says a lot more about me than you. I'm proud to be human, and I wake up every morning without feeling like a total piece of shit. Can you say the same? Marcel stalked away with a limping gait, and the door clanged open at his behest. The human receded down the corridor, as did the UN guard shadowing him. The heavy clops of their feet faded out of earshot. My spines began to settle, left without the company of any predators. That final question resonated through my head. The scarred flesh-eater knew that answer as well as I did. It was my treatment of a perceived abomination that shaped me into one myself. And no, I don't think I'd ever feel pride or contentment again. The spark that made me Sovlin, the brazen officer, was gone for good. When the Terran lawyer returned, I decided to go along with his merciful plots. Humanity treated monsters with dignity for their own sake, and who was I to ruin it for them? Date, Standardized Human Time, October 3, 2136. Our van cruised along the multi-lane highway, granting me a perfect view of the passing scenery. The road was packed with cars, with light signals governing the traffic flow. The humans were more enterprising and entertainment-driven than I anticipated. Intermittent signs advertised shops, restaurants, and hangouts. Dwellings were mostly tucked away on side streets, away from the hustle and bustle of traffic. Earth is not as harrowing as I expected. There's not a single sign of violence or corpses lying around. It's just people, going about their lives. We were en route to a refugee camp, per the Terran government's request. Despite their best efforts, humans lacked knowledge of our basic biology and necessities. They also were having difficulty getting any Gojits to speak to them, for obvious reasons. The predators asked whether I would be willing to provide guidance and assist communication with the more frightened individuals. My attorney noted that there was nothing offered in return, but I was happy to help my people. The few thousand that were left, anyways. Anton leaned in. Remember, this is a test to see if you'll cooperate. You need all the goodwill you can get here. Don't do anything stupid. The lawyer looked nervous sitting next to me, even with the cuffs around my forepaws. An ankle monitor was also strapped to one leg, suppressing my circulation. The predators didn't trust me not to run off, the second I tasted fresh air. If I intended to flee, why would I have flown a ship into the heart of their territory? There were 2 UN officers at the front of the vehicle, wearing matching artificial pelts. The primate's skin must be sensitive to light, with how they wore extensive garments at all times. Their eyes barely left me. The constant tracking meant my spines hadn't settled for the hours-long ride. The buildup of fear chemicals was dizzying. I coughed. Guard predators. See, can I say something if I, think that my people are being mistreated? One of the officers, named Samantha, gave a curt nod. Yes. You may. If you have any ideas for cultural elements that are missing, that's acceptable as well, the other soldier, Carlos, growled. We know nothing of your religions or customs. That old anxious habit of chewing at my claws cropped up again. The most popular deity worshipped in our systems was the Great Protector, a nature spirit that warded off predators. I never believed in such nonsense myself, Judging by how the Arxer terrorized us, there was no one safeguarding our cradle. Probably shouldn't tell literal predators that our higher power is supposed to keep their kind away. I doubt they'd let Gojits exercise patronage to her, once they discover that. My faint curiosity wondered what sorts of beliefs the Terrans were governed by. Carlos' words implied that they did have religions, which must shape their society's morality. Perhaps their gods offered wisdom such as only killing when necessary, and giving their quarry swift deaths. That could explain their prey-like conventions on prisoners and warfare. Our van paused by a secured gate, where more humans waved it into a large paved area. The vehicle parked itself by a hangar bay, and the operators switched off the ignition. The UN soldiers stalked around to open the rear hatch. A dark corner of my mind fed me awful ideas about what condition the Gojid refugees were in. What if the predators lost patience with the more fearful individuals while we were in transit? What if being around this many prey animals at once stirred the humans' appetite, even if they didn't want it to? This had to be a massive temptation. What are you waiting for, Sovlin? Samantha waved a hand impatiently. Get a move on it. Anton snaked his fingers around my wrist, steadying me as I stumbled out of the van. The predator's skin was slick and oily, the touch sent a shudder through my veins. I tried to use my surroundings to ground myself, and forget about my proximity to the Terran. There were no hints of any pens, suspicious contraptions, or butchering tools. This appeared like the helpful facility the predators proclaimed it to be. Thousands of Gojits were milling about, while humans lingered by designated assistance tents. The largest line was at a station labeled for locating loved ones. You can't have gotten many people off planet, I muttered. Why give them hope? Carlos crossed his arms. Such a cynic. If we reunite a handful of friends or family, then it's worth it. The female guard shook her head in disapproval as well. She fished a yellow object out of her pocket and tugged down the outer skin. The soft flesh below had to be from a plant, judging by the lack of eyes, limbs, or blood. Was she offering me food? I wasn't hungry. To my bewilderment, Samantha took a bite out of the clasped vegetation. The seeds in the half-eaten object confirmed that it was a fruit, rather than any animal organ. This predator was chowing down on prey snacks, right before my eyes. I thought it might be curiosity what our food tasted like, but she seemed too bored for it to be interest. Marcel could have eaten fruit. I thought the only way to feed him was to sacrifice a crew member, I mused, with a guilty pang. Stars, are these humans even predators at all? Samantha's forward-facing eyes locked on me. Why are you looking at me like that? You eat plants? I squeaked. Anton nodded. We're omnivores, Sovlin. Humans can eat meat, but that's not the main part of our diet. Omnivore? I struggled to pronounce the tonal word, since no equivalent existed in my language. Okay. Sorry for gawking. And maybe just show me something you want my help with? Carlos steered me toward a large dormitory, palming his chin in thought. This predator had strange green markings across his arm. Was that some sort of customary brand for males in their service? Maybe it was a way of denoting his kill count or ancestral heritage. The olive-skinned human didn't notice me studying him, which was a relief. The male guard checked that no Gojids were watching, before pointing to the far end of the bunks. See that group huddling over there? How they seem to be protecting that chap with the beige claws. What about it? I answered. That guy they're shielding has been unresponsive to any of our orders, Samantha chimed in. Completely ignoring us. Carlos nodded. Which isn't the issue. Lots of Gojids haven't been very cooperative, because they're afraid or otherwise. But this particular fellow, it's like everyone tries to get him away as quickly as possible. So what? You, want me to get this one to listen to you? I can't guarantee I can do that. The predator shook his head. Just find out why they're hiding him. If he's a celebrity, a religious leader, a politician, I don't know. If he's important to you all, we can give him special treatment. The Gojid in question wasn't anyone that I recognized. If I didn't know him, it was unlikely he was famous enough that large percentages of our people would pick him out. A suspicion flickered in my mind that this one had some sort of disability. Everyone knew that predators practiced the survival of the fittest maxim of nature. The humans had ample emotions, but would they knowingly expend resources on a deficient individual? Someone with a permanent handicap wouldn't be helpful for rebuilding our species to the predatory mindset. Surely, they'd want that trait wiped out of the gene pool. Humans probably would think they're doing us a favor, with how limited our numbers are. They'd never understand why we nurse an individual who cannot care for themselves, or can never live a normal life. I'll check in, I growled. Don't come with me. Nobody will talk to you. Samantha tossed the finished fruit peel into a waste bin. Fine. Don't try to run. That band on your ankle will tell us where you are. My conscience was torn as I wandered over to the group. While I owed the predators an immense debt, one I could never atone for, sacrificing another person's life felt immoral. Perhaps I should have just refused to help. If I didn't know anything, it couldn't be used against the poor guy. A Gojid female watched my approach and pointed a claw at me. Stop. What do you want? I halted in my tracks. Is the young man there all right? Have the predators done something to him? Nothing like that, she muttered. Why should we trust you? You just came with a bunch of their soldiers. We saw you go through the checkpoint. I'm a high-ranking Gojid officer that was taken prisoner during the war. The words were automatic, as if some other persona jumped behind the wheel. The second they released me, I'm doing what I can to help, under the circumstances. You might know me, my name is Captain Sovlin. Her eyes widened. The Sovlin? It's an honor, sir. I'm Berna, and the silent one's Talpin. Nice to meet you. May I ask again what the issue is? Tal is deaf. He can't hear any of the predator's commands, and they're starting to get belligerent. We're trying to guide him, but it's a matter of time before they figure it out. How long do you think you can keep them in the dark? The humans aren't stupid. A few days, at most. But every hour we keep my brother alive is worth it to me. I studied the deaf Gojid, noticing the confusion plastered across his features. A burning feeling crawled into my throat. The length of Talpin's lower spine suggested that he had just reached adulthood. This teenager had so much of his life ahead of him, and his family circle would mourn his loss immensely. The UN soldiers were waiting, expecting a full report. Yes, it was a single life to earn the humans' favor, one that would be terminated soon anyways. But there were so many fatalities on my conscience. As it were, that count was more than I could live with. I couldn't let another person die because of me. Not a single one. The Terrans would resent my disobedience, but any threats paled in comparison to a novel source of guilt. I understand. I suggest that you lay low as possible, I said with a soft tone. Take care of yourselves. Talpin waved at me, blissfully ignorant to the dilemma in my mind. I shuffled back toward the predators, while a choking sickness clamped down on my stomach. Their hideous eyes searched mine for any clues. Carlos barked a question, but the translated meaning was lost beneath my swirling thoughts. Sovlin? Talk to me, buddy. Anton patted my shoulder, and I flinched at the contact. You look shaken up. What's the matter? Samantha narrowed her eyes. What did they tell you? If there's a threat, we can try to de-escalate the situation. That is part of our training, you know. I'm sorry. And no one is in danger. But I can't tell you, I whimpered. What do you mean, you can't tell us? The female predator hissed. Your reaction could be drastic. I can't get someone else killed, no matter how bad I feel about Marcel. Just throw me back in my cell, okay? Please. She blinked. Nobody is getting killed. Have humans ever displayed violence toward you? Either you trust us to conduct ourselves with kindness and compassion, or you haven't reformed at all. Pick one. I don't know. Shit, I don't know. Sovlin, we are trying to help these people. You have my word that no harm will befall any of them. Not unless there is zero alternative, Carlos growled. I squeezed my eyes shut. Feeling empathy was a far cry from the altruistic disregard of genealogy. Humans wouldn't be a strong, warrior species without making a few logical sacrifices. It might stupefy them that we burdened ourselves with so-called debility. Would honor be enough to compel the predator guards to spare Taupin? The lawyer jostled my arm again. You're panicking. I can see that. Whatever predator nonsense you all are convinced of, it's dead wrong. We are nothing like the Arxer. Yes, but he's deaf. I blurted. The humans recoiled. All of their expressions seemed stunned, from how their eyebrows shot up toward their hairline. I don't think that possibility even crossed their mind. Why would it, when they would never engage in such an impractical undertaking themselves? Shit, what have I done? You couldn't keep your fat mouth shut and let a teenager live his final days in peace? I berated myself. You're a weak-minded, selfish asshole, Sovlin. You should have spaced yourself back on your ship. Samantha scratched her head. Was that so hard? I think I can take care of this. The UN guards stalked toward the group, and I tailed behind them in mute horror. My brain was screaming at them to stop, but I couldn't muster the words. The self-hatred reached a new high, my will to live felt depleted. Were the predators going to take Taupin away from his family? Execute him in front of the watching crowd? The female human approached, without drawing her weapon, and gestured toward the deaf youth. Taupin screeched, as he saw the armed predator's attention on him. With bristling spines, he tried to crawl under his bunk. The Gojid cluster gaped at me with looks of absolute betrayal, tears swelled in my eyes. How could you, Sovlin? Berna jumped between the Terrans and her brother, flexing her claws in defiance. I thought you were a hero. A man who would die for our planet. I collapsed to my knees, hugging my chest. I'm so sorry. I trusted them. Please, don't kill him, predators. I'll give you whatever you want, the sister protested. Samantha dropped to one leg. We're not going to hurt anyone. Can he understand me now? She made a series of animated gestures, concurrent with her speech. Taupin watched her with a blank stare, trembling. Her clawless fingers curled in strange motions, but they didn't seem random. My misery gave way to confusion, as I tried to understand what she was doing. Was this some nonverbal form of communication? That's not hunger or disgust in her eyes, I don't think. Sign language, Carlos explained, spotting my bafflement. It's how deaf people communicate on our planet. Do your translators work on it? And no. Only audible language, that's why Tail S signals don't translate, I stammered. The female predator lowered her hands. Damn it. Please tell him we're going to find a way to talk to him, Gojids. Ask him for a little patience. Berna gaped at the UN soldiers. Okay. Thank you. My mind was spinning. The humans created an entire gesture language for those who lacked hearing? Did that mean that they catered to other ailments too, that individuals like Taupin could live a normal lives? This suggested the limits of their nurturing went much farther than I imagined. The Arxer would have considered any hindered offspring as prey, lumping it in the same category as their food. Then again, they abandoned their children days after birth, whereas Marcel spoke as if humans kept contact with their progeny. With their empathetic behavior toward our younglings, I couldn't imagine they left their kids to fend for themselves. I don't understand. You speak a language for deaf people, but you can hear? I murmured. Samantha raised her shoulders briefly. My brother is deaf. Was from birth. Berna's eyes widened. Your parents reared a deficient offspring. Reworked their whole lives for it, kept it. What the fuck? Of course they kept him, she spat. The Gojid flinched. Sorry. Shit, I meant no offense, Predator. I thought you'd care about individual contributions. There are more ways to enhance society than by being the pinnacle of physical perfection. Anton met my gaze, though replying to Berna. It was like he knew my thoughts followed a similar track. One of our greatest astrophysicists was a quadriplegic for decades, fully dependent on the care of others, unable to talk without a speech synthesizer. Brilliant man. I twisted my claws, pondering their words. Though I regretted my behavior toward Marcel, my understanding of humans was limited to the scope of my prior knowledge. Zarn had spoken in ghastly detail about their cruelty and malice. Our briefing videos encapsulated those heinous acts and confirmed the unthinkable level of viciousness abiding within them. Even in Terran domain, all I see is compassion. Where is the humanity that the Federation saw? Wouldn't such a brutish nature shine through, somewhere? Seeing their redeeming qualities, such as how they were capable of empathy, was a start. However, these primates were nothing at all like any scientist predicted. Predators' entire purpose in an ecosystem was to weed out the weak. They were natural selection itself. You're quite right, humans. You are nothing like the Arxer, I admitted. We're not. We want you to help us beat them, Sovlan, but the UN needed to see that you trust us first. A hard glint flashed in Carlos' brown eyes. I'm satisfied that your remorse is genuine. What do you say we spend a few hours here, then we talk shop? That translated as, discussing work? Touché. We're drumming up plans to take the fight to the Arxer, and to bring whatever is left of your cradle back into our hands. Would you be willing to look them over? Perhaps serve alongside us? I realized that, in spite of my visceral reaction to their features, I almost liked these humans. They had a certain charisma when they articulated their lofty intentions. Our cradle would be little more than rubble now, but its symbolism counted for something. A few thousand Gojids might have survived in bunkers, and these strange predators were their last hope. The UN was giving me a chance to offset a fraction of the damage I'd caused. That wasn't the sort of offer I could pass up. There's nothing I'd like more. Count me in. How did you like the latest episode? I will try to get one a day out for you. Yes, you. Hit the like button, and to keep updated with newest content, click the subscribe button to get notifications when the latest episodes drop. Keep one eye on the universe, and I will see you very soon.